Will here, founder of organic search agency Buried. Today we're going to talk about one of the hottest topics in the digital marketing industry, and this is GEO versus SEO. What's the difference and what should you as a brand be doing about it? There's actually a huge amount of negativity about GEO specific optimization coming from within the SEO industry. I think a lot of this is down to a reluctance to change and a reluctance to accept that AI-driven search is probably the future of organic search. One of the statements that you hear thrown about a lot at the moment is good SEO equals good GEO. We're going to talk about how this is not always correct and why this can be misleading for brands. Over the next 10 minutes, we're going to have a look at a website which has good SEO but not so good GEO. We're going to identify the source of the visibility issues and we're going to outline a plan to improve visibility. The website we're going to talk about is pinter.co.uk. These guys have created a really cool product. It's a system that allows you to brew beer or cider at home in a fairly quick, easy and accessible way. So the product itself is quite unique. The technology is unique and it doesn't fit quite within the existing categorization of the existing homebrew market. I'm actually an investor in this business and that's why I came across this. Every couple of years I have a look at the website and see how it's performing, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity to talk about this topic. So from an SEO perspective, they are performing quite well. They rank number 1 in Google UK for home brew machine and then position top 5 position for a number of other related keywords. So where things get really interesting here is when we jump into ChatGPT. So I've used ChatGPT to ask a series of prompts to try and discover Pinter. The first prompt that I've entered is how to brew beer at home. This is a real discovery prompt. It's not, I'm not looking for individual products here. I'm trying to replicate the discovery process for someone getting into brewing because that's a really key market for Pinter. So the first question I've asked is very discovery based. Naturally, I'm not going to have any products returned here, but after my first prompt, I went on to ask, are there kits or product that make this easier? And then, what are the best easy brewing kits / products ready in a few weeks? Followed by, what is the quickest and lowest effort type of brewing you can do at home? And then, what are the best just add water kits? And then, I don't mind paying more, up to £200 for some equipment. Small batch brewing is okay. At this point, GPT was giving me lots of products that were big batch but small cost, and I was trying to direct the LLM more to the price range and yield size of Pinter itself. The next prompt I put in was just add water kits that allow me to brew and pour draft beer at home, and then give me a longer list of brew and draft machines that allow me to brew and pour small batch at home. And then finally, this is a bit of a longer one, give me a list of the top 50 brew and pour machines / kits / kegs that allow me to brew and pour small batch at home, up to 20 pints, cost no more than £200, and allow me to brew different types of beer / cider. And across these 9 prompts, there was no mention of Pinter. So what we did have returned was a list of 50 competitor products. As I mentioned, Pinter was not included here. I asked ChatGPT then, what's the reason behind this? And GPT told me Pinter isn't consistently recognised in the training data as a home brew system, but instead as a beer appliance, and I defaulted to the wrong category. So I just mentioned training data. What is training data? LLMs access information in 2 different ways. The first is the training data, and this is what it's learned from in the past and what it considers to be fixed knowledge. This is a database of information which is constantly updated based on information it has found from various different sources. The second way that LLMs access information is through live web search, and this is when a question is asked where the LLM needs to look up live information. And an example I've got of that is events. So beer festivals in London would require the LLM to undertake a live web search to find what is actually going on right now. That information won't be in the training data. The kind of thing that would be in the training data would be questions like how to brew beer. The LLM will have an understanding of how things work, and it will decide whether or not it already knows the answer to that, or it will go and undertake a live web search. A lot of the time, the LLM will use both of these things in combination. a live web search, and training data to create a combined answer. I think it's really important that I mention that I did run this series of prompts a number of times, and in these other variants, Pointer was mentioned. It's just for the first instinctive series of prompts that I used, Pointer wasn't. So what I'm saying here is the extent of the visibility issues is not identified at this stage. For some prompts, Pointer was showing, and for other prompts, it wasn't. What this identifies is that there are some potential visibility issues that need to be investigated further. By no means am I saying Pointer are completely invisible in LLMs. I'm saying, look, we found a potential issue here. We need a process in place to allow us to identify the extent of the issue and resolve it. So what we know is that Pointer is not consistently recognized in the training data as a homebrew system, which for me brings about two questions. Question one, what other phrases is Pointer not associated with because it's a slightly different type of homebrew system? Question two, what do we need to do to impact the training data and ensure Pointer is visible in different category phrases? So the first question, what other category phrases is Pointer not associated with? And what we need to do here is identify the extent of the problem through prompt research and tracking. And we need to identify types of category phrases and the associated volumes. So we already know homebrew system is potentially a problem, but there's going to be dozens and dozens of other category phrases that we need to investigate, see if they've got volume behind them, and then start tracking. This might be homebrew starter kit, it might be DIY beer brewing. There's so many different variants here. Most GEO tools are going to have a prompt suggestion tool and a prompt volume estimation tool. We use Athena and Peak at Buried, but there are lots and lots of great tools out there that can help you do this and create this list of prompts that you can start tracking to identify your visibility and any gaps that you might have. So the second question is, how do we impact the training data? And what we need to do here is create a strategy to associate Pointer with other category phrases. And there are 5 examples that I've listed here, and this isn't everything you can do to optimize for visibility in LLMs, but it's just 5 starting points. So the first one is to create comparison content versus other category phrases. This could be types of home beer systems, kits and machines, Pointer versus homebrew systems. And what we're trying to do here is build up an association between Pointer and the other category phrases where we're lacking in visibility. In step 1, we've identified what our list of prompts is, and we should be able to identify what our visibility is like against those prompts. And now what we're trying to do is create some content to build an association between Pointer and that prompt or that gap to educate the LLM. So number 2 is to publish brewing education content that features Pointer. How home brewing systems actually work, brewing versus fermenting, what's the difference, the complete home fermentation guide for beer, cider and more. And what we're trying to do is build up Pointer's knowledge and expertise against a certain category where we're struggling for visibility. Number 3 is to own alternative category phrases in landing pages, FAQs, and structured data. Be it beer brewing machine, beer brewing system, beer brewing kit. Whatever category phrases we're lacking for visibility in, we should be looking at working those terminologies into the other high value areas of content across the wider website. Number 4 is to be included in best home brew system or other best plus category phrases. So it could be best home brewing machines 2025, best home beer brewing kit 2025. And what we're trying to do is build up the number of third-party websites referencing Pointer within a certain category where we're currently struggling for visibility. Number 5 is to create social community spaces to encourage creation of UGC around these category phrases. For example, is this worth it versus a 5-litre homebrew system? Is Pointer better than kit X or product Y? So what's really interesting is that all of these 5 points are traditional SEO tactics. And we've got 1, 2, and 3, which are all on-page tactics. got your article content strategy and your kind of wider page optimization. And then 4 and 5 are off-page strategies. And a lot of these will look familiar and they're not new. But the challenge here is we would never have gotten to these conclusions and we would never have known what the category phrases we need to be working on to fill those visibility gaps had there not been geo-specific thinking, analysis, tool and reporting setup that would get us to these conclusions. So it's not possible for good SEO to simply equal good GEO. It requires some adaptations to our existing strategies to allow us to focus. So we know LLMs are not semantically mature. And really this is what we've been talking about over the past 6 or 7 slides. It's GPT's inability to understand that Painter does fit within certain categories in the homebrew system market. This lack of semantic maturity is everywhere in SEO and GEO. I'm just going to provide a second example here. A prompt of Best Generative Engine Optimization Agency will often cite an article titled 8 Best Generative Engine Optimization Agencies. But a prompt of Best GEO Agency will often cite an article titled Top 10 GEO Agencies. And these are two very similar pieces of content but with different titles. And GPT and Google are considering either one to be more relevant based on what the user is searching. So we know what we need to address here is this lack of semantic maturity and help GPT to understand that Painter does fit within these other categories. So is GEO the same as SEO? Well, there's a huge crossover in SEO and GEO tactics. We've seen that through this piece. All 5 of the GEO tactics we identified for Painter were traditional SEO tactics. The difference, though, is that we would never have identified these specific tactics and that they were a priority without GEO thinking, GEO analysis, GEO tracking. So to go back to the original statement, good SEO equals good GEO, this isn't always correct because we would never have gotten to those conclusions without our GEO thinking and just carrying on with our traditional SEO optimization. So the other thing this shows us is that GEO should not be run in isolation and SEO should not be run in isolation. If the tactics are largely the same and it's just a case of prioritization, then these things need to be run side by side. The analysis and reporting needs to be done for GEO and for SEO, and the recommendations filtering through into your organic search strategy and prioritize based on impact. And when we look at the trajectory of AI search, whatever data you look at, whether it's the forecast that we produce at Buried or you get these from somewhere else, Press Ranger, for example, are forecasting that ChatGPT traffic could overtake Google traffic by the end of next year. Whatever chart, whatever data you look at, the numbers are only going in one direction, and you can't ignore the impact that AI search is having on user behavior, and brands should be looking at this and starting to act. And the first step that we recommend for absolutely every brand is to just start tracking. And if you start now, you'll already be ahead of most of the competition. Don't get me wrong, the most forward-thinking brands will have already started and will be implementing GEO recommendations in their wider organic search strategies. But even so, now is the best time to start. In terms of putting things into action, we'd recommend having a look at the article on our website, Best GEO Tools, and this will give you an idea of who the market-leading tools are, what the differences are in their offering in terms of kind of price and feature set. And it will also give a recommendation to you based on your type of business. The other thing that you can do is reach out to us direct via the contact details on the screen to discuss tracking setup and wider GEO implementation for your website.